Okay.
Yeah, amazing memories. Love this.
Okay, so we are now live on YouTube, but I'm just going to send out the message to everyone. And inshallah, in the next 3 minutes or so, we can start our session, inshallah. In the meantime, those students who are on Zoom, you're welcome to ask questions to Ustadha via the chat function, inshallah. So that's fine as well.
So I've got a question for you.
For me, okay. Yeah, if you just give me 1 second, once I just send this out, then I'll be fully ready to go with that, inshallah.
It's just a technical question, nothing.
Oh, yeah, go for it. Yeah, go for it. Go for it.
So, you know, over here, there's two options. So it says panelists and it says attendees.
Yep.
So are we the panelists and everyone else watching, are they the attendees?
That's right. Yep, that's right.
Oh, okay. Because I was sending my messages to the panelists and that's why my students won't get.
Yeah. So you've got to kind of tick the all panelists and attendees, then they will get it.
All right, that's fine. Yeah, I'm sorry, guys.
Or what you could do is just verbally respond to them. So everyone gets to hear what they're saying. So you could say, oh, you know, Fizz has asked me this, here's my response.
Yeah, it's actually Fizza who pointed. Yeah. No, I think it's Zahra who pointed this out. But yeah, let me just respond to them here.
That's fine. So when you're responding, if you can click on all panelists and attendees, then
yeah, I've done it.
Cool. Okay, so we are now live on YouTube, and what we generally tend to do is we give a few minutes just for everyone to settle in and students to come on. Some may be looking for their tablets right now, some may be looking for their laptops and settling down. We always have our few students who join us on Zoom every time, and then we have many who join us on YouTube. Some don't really fully like Zoom as much, that's why, and YouTube is much easier to use. So Ustadha, what I will do, inshallah, if there are any questions on YouTube, I will say them out, and you know, you can respond to them how you like, inshallah.
Okay, sure.
And as we mentioned, it is going to be an interactive session. So if any students do have any questions, remember, use the chat function for positive questions. Try not to use it to talk to each other. And that goes on YouTube as well. And we will ask those questions. And as we do every Fridays when we have a guest, it's a bit like an interview, you can say, but it's more, you know, it's more relaxed and chilled. So Ustadha Asmaa is going to be talking to us today on a very, very important topic. And Ustadha will talk to us about that in more detail. But just to let you know, she's going to be reflecting over Islam and young people's practice, as in what they do. But before we do get there, we're going to wait for just one more minute. And then after that, I will start asking Ustadha just about her first and how she got interested in Islam and what she did as a result of that interest. Did she just keep that interest to herself and do nothing about it? Or did she actually do something? So that's where we're going to start in about a minute. Is that okay, Ustadha? So we've got another minute. And after that, we will begin.
That sounds good.
So if I'm looking down at my phone, usually the reason for that is I'm trying to engage on YouTube as well. So I'm trying to look at Zoom and YouTube together to just engage everyone who's there. So
No
usually,
worries.
yeah. So usually there's more people on YouTube who join. So Ustadha Taiba, my wife, she's saying, Assalamu alaikum Ustadha Nada. Sorry, Ustadha Asma.
Wa alaikum assalam. How is she?
How are you? And she said, and Ustadh Hamid. Yes. So that was just, it's only been, I think, 30 seconds since I haven't seen her. And she's just said salam as well. So wa alaikum salam.
Ustadh Hamid, I must say you look like you're in a man cave.
Yeah,
You know, like
yeah.
with all your books in the background.
Yeah, and all the other little bits and pieces.
Yeah.
Yep, yeah. This is the man cave, and it's right on the top floor. So if any of my daughters do want to come up, they'll have to come all the way up, going through many staircases.
It looks cool.
Yeah. Oh, Zahra has some points that she's mentioning. She's saying, I want to work at FET, Ustad. That's what Zahra is saying. So inshallah, you've got to work hard. You've got to work hard at that, and inshallah, that can happen. So
yeah, inshallah.
Definitely, inshallah. Cool. I think we've given enough time to our viewers and all our students to join us today. And I think we are ready to start. Is that okay, Ustadha? So let's start, inshallah. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Nahmaduhu salli ala rasulihil kareem. Amma ba'd. So alhamdulillah, today, it's another Friday, and this time it's after Ramadan as well. So, and we have another special guest with us today, and that is Ustadha Asmaa Mahmood. Now, many of you will know Ustadha Asmaa because she may have taught you, she may have taught you tajweed, she may have done some Islamic study sessions with you. Not only that, she's also done some self-defense classes with some of the students as well. So you may know her from that as well. Some of you, if any of the teachers are here, you may know her from Ibrahim College, I believe. You may know her from any other higher learning classes that were taking place. Fiza and Ibrahim are saying that I love kickboxing. That's very good, mashallah. And it's all part
do.
Yeah. So well done for that. Well done. This is all part of our faith, and we believe in a holistic approach to Islam. That Islam is not restricted to textbooks. It's not restricted just to worship, but it's fueled further by all of these things that can bring us closer to the life of Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, including kickboxing, including wrestling, archery, and staying fit, and worship and spirituality. All of that comes together. And when we try and understand Islam, we need to try and understand Islam with all of the holistic nature that Islam is there. So we're going to start first of all by asking Ustadha Asmaa just a bit about her background, when she became interested in Islam, and after that interest, how did it all come about? What did she do about it? So Ustadha Asmaa, what did you do? When did you become interested in Islam, and what did you do as a result of that?
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. So alhamdulillah, I've been fortunate in the sense that I've grown up in a fairly religious household. I'd say my mom is more religious than my dad. She sort of always pushed it.
Is your dad listening to this?
I don't know. I don't think so.
Okay, all right.
But even if he was, like, it's known among our family, so it's not like I'm quoting him or anything.
Cool.
And he's got a good heart, so yeah, I always say that. But obviously, like me being a young person, like your mom forces you to go to these classes that you don't really want to go to. The religion seems so boring. And I just remember, like, as a kid, like spending some time in a mosque, or literally like being forced into like certain courses even. And at the time it was my cousin as well, me, my cousin and my sister. And yeah, we didn't like it. Like, we almost hated it basically, right?
Yeah.
So growing up, that was the sort of like the dynamic. But I still used to like practice reluctantly, And then I went to sixth form, and during sixth form I had like this really bad injury. So my knees got injured.
Which sixth form did you go to? So in school, just so that maybe some of our students have been there.
I went to Latimer. It's in Enfield.
Okay.
So I went to like a private girls only school, and then from there I went to that in my sixth form. And then so like I was there. I just went through this injury and whatever. Like it was like a really big deal for me. And I feel like through that I turned to religion because of it. And I don't think it was like almost conscious. It was just kind of like, well, where do I go? Like if I can't practice like sports, and I used to do martial arts at the time, and I was like, if I can't do my martial arts because I'm injured, I was basically like a little depressed sixth former, right? So I thought, let me just become a little bit more religious and stuff. And then from there, I decided to change my university options from economics to Islamic studies for one of my
Wow.
universities.
So can I ask, which university were you applying for?
So I applied to, so you apply to UCAS, so you applied
Yeah.
to about 5 of them. And I applied to SOAS. I think I applied to, like on a whim, like I think I applied to like Oxford or Cambridge, one of them. And then I applied to UCL. And I don't really remember the last 2 options.
Okay. And
yeah,
which one did you end up going to?
I didn't go to any, and
Okay,
I'll tell you
interesting.
like what actually happened. But I changed the SOAS option to Islamic Studies because SOAS is one of the few universities who offer that course.
Yep.
And then I decided actually that I wanted to study Arabic, so I thought let me take a gap year and I'll go to university the following year. I studied Arabic at Ibrahim College for a year, and I really enjoyed it. It was really eye-opening, and I realized how fundamental the language is to the religion. So I decided that I want to continue studying Islam, but why not study it at the hands of Muslims, like before I go to university? And that was just my my way of thinking. So, and even obviously I was influenced by the teachers as well because they advise you. And I thought I can always go to university, like no one's stopping me. So that's why I decided to do the Alumni program at Ibrahim College. And I've actually completed it. I'm in my final year, so I'm studying Dora with Ustadha, as you may know.
Oh, you're studying under her?
No, with her. So
oh, okay, with her. Okay.
She's like my classmate.
Okay.
And then yeah, next year, inshallah, I aim to do my masters at Salah. So,
brilliant, mashallah. And what do you aim to do your masters in?
So originally it was Islamic studies, but at the moment, or for quite a while, I've been hooked onto intensive Arabic and linguistics, because I'm just interested in the breakdown of the language. And I just feel like a lot of knowledge is hidden in the language. And you know, Allah in the Quran as well, He actually emphasizes that He uses the Arabic language in particular so that we can take some lessons. And like, what are these lessons, you know? So that's what interests me.
Fantastic. So that's kind of been your journey into Islam. So it's been pretty much an intellectual journey, right?
I would say intellectual, but I feel like spirituality is deeply personal. So although I was studying academically, I was studying Islam academically, I feel like through that, I went on a spiritual journey as well. And it's unique and different for everyone. So everyone sort of wants to find out. And sometimes they can be detached. So sometimes you can just be in the academia and not have a spiritual journey. Or sometimes the spiritual, not the academia, whatever. But I do feel like it was both for me.
Oh, mashallah, that's fantastic. And it's quite right what you're saying. Some people think that when you go on, an intellectual path, that's it. It's divorced from the spiritual path. And if you go on a spiritual path, the divorce from the intellectual. But again, those are one of two extremes. And when we look at the companions as well, it's always intermingled. And that's the kind of philosophy that we're trying to promote at Fatima Elizabeth as well. Okay, so now Hussein just asked a question. What is the topic of today's session? So Ustadha, would you like to answer that question and also tell us why you've chosen that and why you think it's going to be beneficial for students today?
So the topic for today is Islam, so Islam as a religion, and particularly in relation to young people. So are young people practicing Islam, or how do they practice Islam, or how can we, I don't know, present Islam to young people to make it a little bit more appealing? Just a whole sort of discussion around that. And the reason why this came about is because I don't think there's one particular reason. I just feel like me generally, I love young people. I feel like they have so much to offer and so many talents, and I just feel like they're shunned a lot of the time. Don't do this and don't do that and don't do this, and they're just sort of like suppressed, and even their talents are suppressed, right? And obviously, like Ustadh Hamid, I've seen you that you're a role model, mashallah, in terms of like honing the skills.
I really hope so, inshallah. I really hope so.
No, 100%. And yeah, I just feel like they need to be encouraged and they need to be accepted for who they are, and they can follow that whatever avenue they want to in life, obviously bearing in mind it's acceptable, and they can still be a practicing Muslim. A lot of the times I feel like there's a misconception that there's only one shade of a religious person, one type. And I'm sure everyone can picture that person in their head, male or female, they all look the same. And that's not the idea. Like, we're not supposed to be identical copies of one another. We're supposed to be different, and we're supposed to be the best version of ourselves. And that was apparent, you know, in the age of the Sahaba. They were all different.
Absolutely, no, absolutely. You've got everything spot on as well, and that's definitely something that we're trying to promote in Fatima Elizabeth as well, and also with our staff. I think all our staff come from various backgrounds, and you know, it's diverse in terms of their learning, their journeys, their careers as well. We're not just having staff, for instance, who are just from a certain background, or whether they've just studied Alimiyah. Various staff have come from even academic backgrounds, come from, you know, different you know, ways in life as well. So that's definitely true. And coming back to that, Ustadha, there's a point that you mentioned to me, and that is, for instance, what does it mean to practice Islam? So can you answer that question? What does it mean to practice Islam? And this is going to be a difficult question, I think, because we're obviously, our direct audience here are, say, young people who are living in the West, and not only in the West, in London specifically, because our madrasa is in London. We may have viewers from outside of London as well. So it's a tough one. How would you answer that question?
So obviously there's no sort of simple answer to this, as you already said. So I'll try my best to answer it however I can.
Yep.
But I do feel like there's like almost like two categories or two parts of practicing Islam. So there's the worship aspect, which is, it's sort of non-negotiable, you know, like praying, praying your Salah, reciting Quran, fasting in Ramadan, carrying out the basics, basically, right? So that's a sort of non-negotiable that everyone must do, should do, whether they're doing it or not, that's up to them. But that's just like how Islam is, right? And then on the other side, we have.
You know, on that point, can I ask you something further and have a little discussion on this?
Yeah.
I think we need to realize as a community, especially those who are coming from, you know, migrant communities, right, that for youngsters today, in these kind of diverse surroundings, with so many ideologies like liberalism out there, you know, you have atheism, all these ideologies, you know, breathing down their necks, and then they are being expected to uphold Islam in every form and way of life. How do you feel about that? And have you kind of reflected over that? And how are they to practice Islam in such difficult surroundings? I can appreciate there might be certain towns in England where there's, you know, it's easier to practice.
Yes.
But for example, when you come to London, it's a melting pot of diversity of ideologies. How are our youngsters to navigate through that and go through on their individual journeys in that way?
So at the end of the day, I'd say that God takes us to account for what we know, what we've been exposed to, where we've lived, who we've come across, right? So obviously that's going to be different for every person. And I do accept that it's very challenging for young people nowadays, especially those who are more exposed to different ideas.
Yep.
So I would
and that's like most of them, because they all do RE, and now RE and philosophies come together.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, Ustadha, carry on. Sorry for cutting you off there.
No, it's right. It's right. So I'd say that I mean, it's good to be curious. So when they do come across these new ideas that they haven't come across before, then they should go back to perhaps their parents, and maybe if their parents can't provide those answers, maybe, you know, go to like a mosque or something, or go to the Islamic bookshop, or just do your research, do the best that you can. And if you're doing that, and even if you don't get the desired results, or you get the conclusions a little bit wrong, that's okay. You're putting in the effort. And obviously some people are going to say, well, you know, I don't really care, I don't have the time, you know. But if you've been taught like certain basics, just uphold those certain basics. You know, like for example, just the basic worship. And if there are like ideas that are almost destructive in your mind, or that you're really confused about, and that you just keep tossing over again and again, just go and ask someone, you know. And don't feel bad about it. Don't feel bad about asking or being curious. It's okay.
Absolutely. That's brilliant. And in terms of actual practicing Islam for youngsters today, how are they to do that? I mean, keeping in mind a typical youngster, just say primary school, secondary school, they wake up early morning, maybe 7, 8. They need to be at school for 9, just say. So from 9 o'clock up until 3 o'clock or 3:30. Dhuhr Salah comes in between school time. During the winter, Asr might come towards the end of school time. And then when they get home, many of our students, they may go to mosque for about an hour or so. So that's a typical day that goes on for them. And within school, there's so much going on. How can students today kind of practice Islam? What can they do on a very practical, pragmatic level?
So, as I've said before, and I'll say it again, I'll keep emphasizing the basics. And in terms of like practicing Islam, in terms of the worship, right? It's for young people. Like if we're talking about primary school kids or secondary school kids, right? It's largely dependent on their household. And obviously, like if their parents haven't been brought up in a religious household, or they're struggling, or they're trying their best, that's okay. Each house is different, you know. So if your parents aren't waking up to pray, we can advise the young person to get up and pray, but it's highly unlikely because they sort of follow what their parents do, right? So I think that's something that we definitely have to bear in mind. And then beyond that, like this, I don't think we have to like overcomplicate it necessarily. Just be yourself, be a good person. Like at a child level, I think Islam is more about being a good person, being a good citizen, just following I don't know how to explain it, following just good morals, you know. And as you grow older, your understanding will become more nuanced, and then you can sort of start looking at the fit of things. But as a child, just be a good child, you know. You don't really have to do anything else. That's what Islam is, just about being a good person, especially at a level of childhood and youth.
So, Sada, here's a thought, right? It's an interesting point that you raised. Be a good child.
Yeah.
But soon as students get into secondary school and they go to year 7, then year 8 and year 9, be a good child is no longer cool at that time.
Yeah,
it's be a bad child that is cool amongst their friends.
Yeah.
And just say, for instance, a student wants to pray Dhuhr. So most likely they'll go to the RE department, knock on the head of RE's door and tell them that, look, you're our RE teacher. Maybe some schools already have provisions for Dhuhr in place. But from my experience, when I was a teacher at school, it would be the RE department or the Muslim teacher that everyone goes to in their classroom, and they lay out the mats and they pray. So what might happen is, there's two things that can happen. One is you quietly go and you pray, and you might be pointed out as, oh, that guy's really holy, that guy's so religious. That's one thing.
Yeah.
If you decide to go back and suddenly you've decided to pray and reflect, there's all these other issues. Some teachers might look at you and think, okay, why is this student suddenly changing? Right? So-and-so student didn't have a hijab on, now they have a hijab. Student didn't have a hat, now they have a hat, right? Or they're looking more Islamic by the day, or Muslimic, as the new term goes. That's one scenario. There's also another student who can not only just quietly go himself or herself, but they try and influence their friends. So there's two types of Muslims, right? There's one
Yeah.
who quietly does their thing, and that's perfectly fine. And there's the other who's saying, you know what, we need to pray. We're Muslims, and Salah is part of one of the 5 pillars of Islam, one of the main 5 pillars. One of the first questions about our life on earth will be about Salah. So there's these two options. So I think, and then there'll be a third student who will be like, I heard Ustadha Asmaa talk about just doing the basics, right? But I don't know how to approach the RE teacher. I don't want my friends to see me. I don't want them to call me names. I don't want them to think that I'm so religious. What do we do? What do we
You're
do?
giving me so many scenarios.
Yeah. So
Okay, I'll work my way through them.
Absolutely. Okay.
Okay, so actually, on the topic of cool, just before I forget, actually. So I know that growing up, and maybe I can't relate 100%, like as in I can't relate 100% to the young people going through their teenage years now. But I'm not that old, and I was a teenager recently as well. And I personally think, and this is more in hindsight, so me reflecting and thinking back. Obviously, when you're a teenager, you're still figuring things out. But guys, take it from me. I personally think that it's cool to have your own morals, and it's cool to stick up for them. It's not cool to just do whatever everybody else is doing, even though people may think that's cool. So getting validation from people and just being accepted. Why is that cool? Like, why is it cool for everybody else to think, you know, oh my God, like you're so cool? Why don't you, as in, what do you think about yourself? You know? And I think our first priority should be, what are my ambitions, or what are my goals? What kind of person do I want to be? And that's cool. And even if people disrespect you or they insult you, I honestly believe that inside their heart they have respect for that person, because they're like, this person is strong-willed. They don't just move with the wind. You know, they don't just sort of listen to any Tom, Dick, and Harry. You know, that's one thing. And then secondly, on the topic of change, you know, you said that how teachers or other students would point out that, oh, you know, now she's wearing hijab, or now he's like, I don't know, wearing, I don't know. I don't think guys really change that much. I think it's more, the most noticeable thing is a woman wearing hijab or a girl wearing hijab. But to be honest, like at that age, everyone's going through changes. Like, you know, like 1 minute, like a guy's got a hairstyle like this, and the next week they're trying, like, they're perming their hair, and then the next, like every week, girls are trying different types of makeup, different types of look. It's okay, you know, and that's your age to experiment. And you can just be like, well, I'm trying out the hijab, you know, this is what I want to do. Like, you do you, like you do what you want to do, right? And don't be influenced by other people. And when I say don't be influenced, obviously, like, we are influenced to a certain extent, but we need to sort of temper that, you know, and not be completely influenced by somebody. That's what I'm trying to say. And then in terms of the three scenarios, what was the question in regards to the three? So which ones, as in?
So what's your reflection over those three? How would you speak to each one of them and help them? And especially the third scenario where you want to do it, but you're kind of being pulled back because of your company, because of all the ideologies, because you might think what others think about you. And I think you've already answered some of those points as well.
Okay, so in regards to the first kid who's sort of doing it by himself or herself, and they're just sort of getting on with it, I have a lot of respect for that kid, you know. They're just sort of doing it by themselves, and they're not trying to make a fuss, and that's quite a smart way of doing things, you know. You don't want to attract too much attention. You're just getting your job done, and then you're back, so you're starting everything, you know, as if nothing even happened. You know what I mean? So yeah, I'd say that just keep at it, and maybe when you get to a stage where, you know, you feel comfortable enough to talk to your other fellow Muslim friends about prayer, then go ahead, you know. And that sort of comes onto the second friend. So the second type of person who's sort of like really adamant that we should all go and do it together. I'll say that's good. I'll say the concern for others is really good, and obviously your friends are really influential on you. But I just say that if you can't get them to do it, just don't compromise yourself. At least make sure you get it done, because you're the priority first, and then after that it's your friends, and then after that everybody else, you know. And the third person who's sort of struggling and is a little bit nervous, I understand, like, why you'd be nervous, you know, like, it's especially at that age, because I remember being in sixth form, and I was literally the only one who's to go and pray, because my sixth form was like largely, I think, non-Muslim, non-practicing, and I had some Muslim friends, but they wouldn't really pray because maybe they just like weren't used to it, or they found it odd, you know. So I just like go and do it myself. And I remember like being in classrooms sometimes, and people are just like, you know.
Yeah.
And I actually had a room in front of the reception. Like, I used to, obviously sometimes it's difficult finding a room, you know, like you go to one and like that's cool, and you go to the other one and the society going on, whatever. But yeah, coming back to the third person, I mean, just go for it. Like, what's the worst that could happen? You know, like, you're curious about this, you want this, just go and do it. You know, and if they like laugh at you or say like, why are you asking about this, or why are you so rude, to say, because I am, you know, own it. Like, that's what you want.
Absolutely. And just to add to that, Salah, I think, you know, when you go back to Mecca, you know, during the time of Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, it was not cool to follow the Prophet at the time, right? That was probably the worst thing a poor person in Mecca could do, to follow a man who's completely against the system, who's completely against the idols, completely against the whole society that was there in Mecca. And it was not cool for people to follow Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. It wasn't cool for people to pray, because if they got caught praying, they would be punished for it. But they had this belief, they were confident. And I think that's key, confidence in one's faith, that we are doing this because of this reason. I am doing this, I am praying because I know that life is short, and the real life is the life of the hereafter. And it's only through prayer and it's only through the teachings of Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam that I will make it through and I will gain salvation in the life hereafter. Whilst you were talking, Ustadha, I was kind of self-reflecting on how I was, because I studied at Edinburgh Primary School, which is just around the corner from here. Now it's actually moved right in front of my house. And I remember I just had a flashback of what we did. So what happened was, at that time, I saw this film. And I do recommend this one, actually. It's The Message, right? And
I've seen it.
it's quite old. I think it came out in the 1970s, but it's still, I think it's one of the only good films that are out there about the seerah of Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. There are others now as well, like the Umar series, but the students will have to check out the translation. If you haven't got them, let me know. I'll send you a private link that I've saved on my G Drive for all the 30 parts. Because I think, especially for students nowadays as well, those who can read, I would definitely say read the seerah of Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, okay, and learn what they went through and relive their Meccan experience in your life today, right? If it's in your school, in your own way, right? And live the Medinan experience in your own way, right? And so anyway, coming back to the message. So I remember I saw that film when I was like, I think 8 or something like that. And I was really blown away by it, totally. That was my first proper connection. I mean, both my parents were practicing, and we moved to this house which was closer to the masjid for this very reason. And so then what happened was, I came across that film, and then it wasn't long after that one of our teachers, his name was Maulana Ashraf. He had a white beard, and he was a very nice, very, very nice and gently spoken Maulana in our mosque. And he came to the mosque, came to our class and said, look, here's a good book in English. It's just recently been translated, and it was written by Maulana Abul Hassan Ali Nadwi about the life of the Prophet and the life of the prophets. So there were 2 volumes. So I went and bought those, and I would kind of go back to them and go to the local shop on my road and buy and after I finished the seerah, then I went on to Abu Bakr, then Uthman, then Umar radiallahu anhu, and then Ali radiallahu anhu, all of them. But I remembered one thing which was quite funny actually, which we did at school. So when I saw that film, I thought, we need to spread Islam. So what I did, there's a scene in the film which myself and a few close friends tried to reenact at school. And if people try to do that today, it will be quite funny, actually. What we did was, so there's a scene in there, right, where Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, so the Prophet is not shown in the film, but what happens is there's these 3 guys dressed in white, right, and they're all given a letter, right, and in that letter it's like a scroll, and the message of Islam is given on there. So what we do, we reenact that at school, in Edinburgh Primary School. So we kind of get a scroll, right? And we write out some stuff. And I can't remember where we got the information from, but we got it from somewhere. We put it on that piece of paper, and we go with that scroll at playtime, right? I'm not recommending that anyone does this.
You would actually hand it out?
No, we actually we unscrolled it as they did in the film, like this.
Yeah.
And then we read out the message of Islam to as many students as we could. And out of that, I just remembered that it's quite actually funny.
That's actually quite cool,
Yeah, and then there was one convert that we got from Edinburgh Primary School. He was a Buddhist. He was Chinese, and then I remember it was a day off in the mosque in one of the days. I think it was the 10th of Muharram, so there was no mosque. So what we did was we thought, what, let's get this our friend, and what we did was we took him to the mosque. We showed him how to do wudu. We showed him how to pray, and then we all brought some gifts from our house, like hats and things like that. And he expressed himself as a Muslim. About a month later, their mum came to us, right, and gave all those gifts back. Said, "No, thank you. We're not going to follow this religion." But that was our reenactment from the message that I just remembered for the first time since then.
Wow. So, is he Muslim now?
Well, I don't know where he is now. Because after secondary school, I think he went to a different secondary school, and I totally forgot who he was. Forgot his name as well, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But this is when I was like, well, maybe 10, I think, or 9.
Wow.
So yeah. So before we carry on, Ustadha, there have been some comments coming up. So should we go to the comments and have a look?
Yeah, sure. I was actually going to say that because there's so many.
Yes.
That haven't had the chance.
Yeah. So what I'll do, I'll say them out to you, so you wouldn't have to go through them. So mostly a lot of people are saying Jazakallah for coming back online with us, Ustadha. So that's I think quite a few students have said that, and they're quite excited for the session today. Oh, there's an interesting question here. Ustad, are you in any sort of way related to Ustada, as I'm assuming because you are both Mahmoods?
Yeah, I think I tried to dispel that theory, but
Okay. So we are siblings in terms of our faith. So we are
yes,
innamal mu'minuna ikhwa. Based on that, we are siblings, but not blood related. No. So that's your answer. That was to Zahra. Okay, let's move down.
we
Right.
are from
So
the same country though. We're both Pakistani,
yeah,
right?
we're both from the same country, absolutely. So that's another added bonus as well. Mufti Hilal, so Zahra is saying that Mufti Hilal said that La ilaha illallah is a simple dhikr to do as no one can actually see you are doing it. That's what you told me at FEP, Ustada. So that's fantastic. Prophet ﷺ says this, Jaddidu imanakum, renew your faith. And Sahaba said, how? And he said, Akthiru min qawli la ilaha illallah. Continuously say La ilaha illallah and pondering over its meaning as well. Fiz is saying, our primary school, we can't pray. So that's something you need to raise with them because based on your human rights, Fizza, you're allowed to express yourselves, but making sure you don't break any rule of your school. I'm sure if you and your friends get together, write up a letter to the head teacher, check out, and the best way to do it, check out your school policies, right? When it comes to freedom of expression, when it comes to doing what you want, you can even form a club, a Dhuhr club, right? Where you can
Yeah,
pray Dhuhr together and maybe read for 1 minute, just one. You don't have to do a lot, just read 1 minute out of a book. That's and as a form of reflection. And you can tell your head teacher, we're going to be reflecting over what makes us good students, and we can help you with the books just about Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam and education, because that goes in line with school as well. That why in classroom we should be good Muslims, and also why outside of the classroom we should also be good Muslims. So that's fun. So we can look into that. Don't worry about that. Inshallah, we can help you with that as well. Okay, let's move down. It does not matter. So Fizz is saying it doesn't matter what anyone says. It is you who will account for your salah at the end of the day. Absolutely, Fizza. Jazakallah for that.
very
This life is,
powerful.
yeah, this life is temporary. The greatest life is in Jannah. Absolutely. Zahra saying, in my brother's sixth form, there is a prayer room. Absolutely. So again, sometimes you may need to find out, ask people, ask your. So if you're in a secondary school, best bet is to go to your RE teacher. Right? They should know better because they are teaching RE. They should know what your needs are, and then they can speak to the head teacher for you as well. Right? And they can support you as well. That's one way of doing it. Also, you may find that there's a Muslim teacher in your school. You might want to approach them and say, look, I want to pray at Dhuhr time. What can I do? And then they will help you as well. So when I was teaching in one of the schools in Barking for a short period of time, some of the Muslims came to me and they said, look, we have no place to pray, because there were two buildings. In one building, they had a place, and the other building, there wasn't. So then I made my classroom available during break time. It actually became difficult because I used to have like up to 30, 40 students in the class, and I never used to get a break. But that was that. I found the movie link. Shall I send it? Yeah, you can send it. That's fine. Okay. I'm moving. Okay, Zahra saying, yeah, I mean, we should speak out at schools, go to churches and everywhere else, but they do not go to mosque or have a prayer time for Muslim students. So I think actually we should start a petition. Yeah, absolutely. So best way to do it, and Ustadha can add to this as well, is to start off with in that particular way. So maybe there's a Muslim teacher, you can approach them. Your RE teacher, if you're in a secondary school, you can approach them. If you're in primary school, you can approach because I think mostly you only have one teacher. So your form tutor, you can approach them and see where it goes. And then if there's backlash, don't worry. I mean, we are here to support you. We will speak to your teacher, your head teachers, and there is no way that they can stop you from praying in your break time. Because if you can play football in your break time, if you can play cricket, if you can just do nothing at break time, surely you can pray at break time. And even if that means playing in the playground, okay, there is no harm in that. All you need is a clean bit of space. You can take, those plastic prayer mats that you can get, keep them in your bag. That shows your faith, and that will make you even more confident Muslims as well. Okay, I'm just going to go into YouTube, Usada, and then we can continue with the session. Okay, there's quite a lot on YouTube as well. Okay, we'll start. So Sister Yasmin is saying, who also I think is a Mahmood, young people have the solutions if one listens to them and values their opinions and views. Absolutely. It comes down to every individual student because you are living that life. We can only see everything from afar. You are living it. You tell us the solutions. We will facilitate. We will help you, obviously.
And Ustadh,
Yep.
just on that note,
Yep.
I really feel like not just young people, but any person should be given a certain amount of ownership over their
Yep.
religion. Like it's their religion, it's their practice, it's between
Yep.
them and God. And while we advise and we facilitate,
Yep.
we can't take over, you know?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. That's key. That's absolutely key. And we can kind of see that at the time of Prophet ﷺ with the youth. You know, when even, for instance, when going on various expeditions, Prophet ﷺ put a limit on the age. And there were some youth who were saying, you know what, this limit's unfair. And they began to come to Prophet ﷺ and petition to him, actually, in a sense. They were
Ibn
petitioning.
Umar, radiallahu
Yeah.
anhu, comes to
Yeah, absolutely. And they petitioned the Prophet ﷺ, and there's various stories like that. And then ultimately they kind of prove themselves that they can actually go. And then Prophet ﷺ kind of waivers that restriction of age and looks at the ability of some of the younger companions. Yeah, absolutely. And something else, let's see. Yes, Ustadha Shazia is saying, keep good company as they do pray in secondary school. Absolutely. Find that company. Right? People might say you're not cool because you do weird stuff in the RE room, right? But remember, there's so many things. Everything that comes down to what you believe, right? What we believe as a community. For example, the money that's in our pocket, right? It's actually, what's the worth of the money, the paper that we have? The actual worth of the paper is nothing. It's just paper, right? It would cost like what, 2 pence, 3, 4, 5 pence, including the ink. But because we collectively give it value, that's why it's everyone believes in this lie that yeah, this piece of paper has so much value because all of us collectively believe it. Now, if everyone collectively believes that these Muslims are strange individuals, we as Muslims have to collectively believe, yeah. I mean, Prophet ﷺ said that that Islam will begin as a stranger, and towards the end it will become like a stranger again. So our Prophet ﷺ has foretold this; he's prophesied this already. So again, coolness it depends on what you believe and what you say. So it's all down to you, absolutely, and your company. And let's see, Ustada Akifa is saying, good to see Ustada Asma. So Ustada Akifa is saying that on YouTube. Let's move on and let's take the last point from there. What we faced.
So I'm just gonna on my lamp because I feel like it's really dark here.
Yeah, sure, that's fine. Yep. So I'll just wait for Ustada to come back. Yep. So Ustada Shazi is saying, what we face today is nothing as compared to our Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. So always look up to him and Allah will ease our worries, inshallah. Absolutely. So here's the the benchmark for us that look, we need to really think about Prophet ﷺ and his sacrifices and also his companions. And also individuals like, for instance, Fatima Elizabeth, who went through quite a lot as an individual in England, facing all kinds of Islamophobia. So this is part of the struggle. For us, we should take it and be proud over the struggle. Yeah, Allah has given me the opportunity to be part of this. Back over to you, Salah. So I'm going to go back to some of your bullet points, which I don't want to, I don't want to miss out on anything. Which method? Oh, okay. So the difference between how the older and younger generation practice Islam. So older people via command and little explanation, younger people not so much. And which method is more effective? That's a very, very important question, Ustadha.
So yeah, this is one of the things that I wanted to talk about.
Yep. Go for it.
Based on my own observation as well as the observation of like just other young people that I've spoken to. And it goes to like the older generation. So what I mean by that is our parents or our grandparents. Their practice of Islam or the way they were taught Islam was largely just by them being told to do certain things. You have to do this and you have to do that. And you have to do this. Like just everything that they had to do, they were just told. And they weren't given as much opportunity to question. So it wasn't like they couldn't ask anything. But if they asked too many questions, like, why do you have to do this? Or I don't feel comfortable doing that right now. It was kind of like not taken, not entertained, and they just had to get on with it. Whereas nowadays, because young people are exposed to so much more, specifically because of social media and everyone owning a phone, phone, laptop, the internet, right? Their minds, I think, work or are engaged a lot earlier than the minds of the older generation, and hence they're exposed to a lot more things, and they need more answers as well. So so I just noticed that, I think it's been said so many times, but I'll repeat it anyway, that for young people nowadays, we have to be more facilitating. We have to listen to them. Like, what is it that you want? What is it that you're finding difficult? Or what don't you understand? Or, listen to them, give them the safe space to sort of explore Islam. Otherwise, they'll find that safe space somewhere else, So that's really important. And in terms of what method is more effective, is it more effective to just sort of, what's the word when you impose? Yeah, when you impose religion on somebody, or is it more effective to sort of present it and let them take it at their own pace? Yeah. So even though from a distance it might seem that imposing religion is more effective because you're getting the desired result. That person is now wearing hijab, they are praying, they are doing certain things. And if you sort of just move back a bit and give the person a bit more space, they don't always start practicing the way you want them to. However, like, in my personal opinion, I feel like the second approach is much better, because in the first approach, even though you're getting the desired results, I don't believe it's sincere. So I personally feel like whoever is practicing, they're doing it for the sake of you, not for the sake of God, not because they want to do it. And the moment you disappear, that's it, it's party time, let me go and do this, that, like, I wanted to go out with my friends, or I wanted to try that I've never tried. And it's almost like much worse. So the backlash is almost much worse than it would be had you just given them some space and accepted their practice at their own pace, right? So I really believe that the second approach is much more effective, and you see the results in the long term, and they're more solid results because the person is doing them out of their own conviction, as opposed to you just imposing it on them and then having to do it and being resentful towards it.
Absolutely, no, absolutely. I definitely agree with that. Okay, let's move on to another point. Here it is. That's a very good point, actually. Why practicing Islam when you're younger is more important to practice it as compared to when you become older?
Yeah, so I was thinking about this, and the common trend is that, when you're young, follow all the trends, have fun, live your life, and then as you grow older and you've basically done everything, let's just start praying now because you're preparing for death, So that's like the common trend. But I thought that that's such a waste, like when you had the full strength and you had the potential to be such a good Muslim, and you had the potential to sort of be creative with your ideas, and if your intention as a Muslim, so whatever you do, you intend that, oh Allah, like this, I'm doing this for your pleasure, you could have gained so much more reward throughout your life, and you could have done it the way you wanted to do it. It wasn't just about like going to the mosque, after school, or just like on the weekends or whatever, and just praying and just getting on with the rest of your life. You could have integrated it fully into your life, become a successful person on earth as well as a successful Muslim, and you could have, I don't know, I just feel like you could have got so much more out of life had you been practicing throughout. And just to dispel the theory that Islam is all about restrictions, because I felt like that. Sometimes I do still feel like that, and I know other people feel like that too. Some of the things you might not be comfortable with, but there's always a reason. And whether we know the reason or not doesn't mean that there isn't a reason, I feel like it largely, like, your understanding of Islam largely depends on how it was presented to you or how you were exposed to it. So if you're always just being taught this is haram and this is haram and that is haram, that's all that's going to go on in your mind. Everything is haram, And it's funny because sometimes when students ask questions, you sort of know that this is their frame of mind, or this is like what's going on in their head, because they'll consistently ask, Miss, is that haram? Miss, is that haram?
Yeah.
And it's like, chill, like haram is a really strong word, It's like, you can even say impermissible, when certain things are impermissible, they don't go all the way to haram. Haram is like, it's like the last resort, you can't do it at all. If you just change your mind and think, what does Islam have to offer, and wait, I can do that, and I can do this, and I can do that as well. And I just think that so many people are creative with how they practice. So I'm on Instagram. I follow a lot of Instagrammers and YouTubers as well. And people are just like, there's like all of these like Muslim women. I feel like Muslim women are more on the side of like makeup and fashion and stuff, but they're still practicing Islam. They're still wearing hijab, and they're just making it a little bit more funky by like trying out different looks, and that's okay. Okay, the older generation, most of them might not approve, but you know, if that's what you want to do and you're still trying your best to keep it modest, go ahead, you know, do it. So yeah, that's it.
There was something that came, or as you were speaking, something that I was thinking about, and I kind of forgot because I just started looking at YouTube. And
Sorry.
I'll just mention Ustadha Yasmin, who is saying that young people need to believe, have confidence in themselves, their deen. They are our future teachers and leaders of faith. Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, so let's carry on, and hopefully that thing will come back, which I wanted to add on and maybe ask you about, but let's move on for now. How can we assess young people today and help facilitate their religious practices?
Is that a bullet point I wrote?
Yes, how can we assess young people today and help facilitate their religious practice? So you might want to explain what you mean by assess. Is it like within a classroom structure, or you know how
Yeah, I was actually going to criticize the word assess. So
okay.
I think I miswrote it.
But then you realize that you said it yourself.
Yeah.
Okay. This will be
I'll
fun
still
and interesting.
criticize it because it doesn't make sense. Like, how can we assess?
Yeah.
If you can just repeat that, how can we assess young?
Yeah. Let me bring it up again. Yeah. How can we assess young people today and help facilitate their religious practice?
Oh, okay. So I'm going to leave the first part out because I'm not sure
Okay,
what
that's
I'm
fine. No, that's fine. Absolutely.
And the second part is how can we facilitate
Yeah.
the practice, religious practice for young people?
Yeah. And when you say we, you might want to explain what do you mean by we?
So when I say we, I mean those people who are privileged enough to have a good grounding in Islamic knowledge or they have a good Islamic background, so much as they're not struggling so deeply themselves. Does that make sense? So if you have something, you're supposed to pass it on, right? So that could be teachers, that could be people who are studying Islam, that could be the older generation. So whoever feels like they are capable of helping somebody else or helping the young generation.
Can I just add to that, Ustadha, because I remembered what I was going to say before, and it kind of it ties into this point as well. And this is a point I want to always raise in the most deepest, most respectful way possible, and that is mosques. Okay, and when we say mosques, we talk about everything that goes in mosques, which includes madrasas as well, like which are inside the masjids as well. And we look at mosques and we see the same people who are coming back to the mosque, the same people, it's the same elders. There may be some local effort going on where people are brought into the mosque, but it's the same people. And I think the people who are coming to the mosque don't even constitute maybe 5% of the broader Muslim population in every area. And I remember when I was with one of the elders a long time back, I'm talking about 15 years ago, and there was something that was said, right? And which really struck me. And the elder said, when you go to a mosque, don't look at who is coming to the mosque, look at the majority who are not coming to the mosque, and think about why that is the case. And have mosques unfortunately become like gentlemen's clubs, where people just come, right? They pray, and it's just that comfort zone for them. Or is it supposed to be something else? So I think that's something we need to really discuss amongst the elders and ourselves as to what is the purpose of these spaces that we have, which we define as masjids. Are we supposed to be somewhat following the benchmark, which is the mosque of Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, and what they were doing there and what was going on there? And and including the whole aspect of the sisters' roles and the girls' roles inside a masjid as well, and what was happening at the time of Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Where have we kind of gone? How far have we gone away from the experience that people had in the masjid of Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam? And just the fact, for instance, there was a person who was brought to the mosque of the Prophet. He was a criminal. He wasn't a Muslim. So he was actually tied up to one of the pillars in the mosque for about 3 days. And they came and they loosened up his the rope that tied him. And then they would come and feed him every single day. and then he would sit there tied up in the back and listen to everything and watch everything that's going on. And after a few days, as he left the actual premises of the Masjid of the Prophet ﷺ, he left something behind in the mosque, and that was his heart, right? So he came back to the mosque of Prophet ﷺ and said, look, I've stayed here for 3 days. I've seen what this is about. And he left as a Muslim. He accepted Islam at the hands of Prophet ﷺ and left as a Muslim. Now, can we say, if a non-Muslim was to stay in our mosque for 3 days, just by a pillar, let's not tie him up or her up, just by a pillar, would they have the same feeling as they leave? And I think that is a benchmark for us. If Prophet ﷺ was to come as an observer and take down notes on how the masjids are today, what would be his level of expectations? Would he leave happily, or would he be saddened by the state of welcome that every strata of society gets? And I'm talking about everyone, I'm talking about children. How welcome do they feel? Do they feel as welcome as Hassan and Hussein radiallahu anhuma felt? Right? Imagine Prophet ﷺ is praying, he's in ruku, he's in sajda, and Hassan and Hussein radiallahu anhuma, they come to the masjid and then jump on his back whilst he's in sajda. And Prophet ﷺ remains in sajda for extremely long. And then and the companions say, Ya Rasulullah, you know, you were in sajda for so long. And he explains to them that, look, they were on my back. He accepts that, right? And the fact that women coming into the masjid, and they were able to straightforward ask Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, questions of all sorts. And I think, another point that was in my mind was, have we made our experience of religion too legalistic? As you were mentioning, that everything's either haram or halal. Haram or halal. And are we becoming really Judaic in that sense? Right? Are we following the Jewish notion of, the way the whole Talmud, the Talmud is what we're seeing, the Talmudization of Islam, that everything's either haram or halal, and that's why we do it. Is it, have we made it that legal? And we need to think about this, that look, is this what Islam is about? Is this what the Sahaba went around doing? This is halal, this is haram. No, or was it the soul of Islam that they accepted, and for them, halal and haram didn't matter as much? And when it comes to, for instance, drinking alcohol, initially there was permissibility, right? But then, because they worked on their faith so much, when the time came to completely abolish alcohol, and soon as the verses were revealed that that khamr and all these intoxicants are impermissible, it was no longer a question of a legal question. It was, okay, this has been set down by Allah, and we understand the reasoning behind this, therefore we stop. And some of the scholars say that there were people who had there were businessmen and traders who had so much wine come over from Syria, and they broke the barrel as soon as they heard this ruling. Right? And there were some who were pouring it in their glasses. They threw the bottle and the glass away. Some had it to their lips and they threw the glass away. Some had it in their mouths and they threw it out, because it was more than just a legalistic tradition. Are we following way too much into the Judaic tradition here? So that's something for me that concerns me. Because I studied the Abrahamic faiths in university as an undergraduate student. And I remember that one thing I came across in the Judaic tradition, and I'm not criticizing Judaism, that's not my place, but this notion of called Torah piety, right? Torah piety is a notion where you study the Torah for the purpose of just studying the Torah. It's just this this pious way of living, that the study of Torah itself is piety. Whereas, you open the Quran, and the very first verses of Surah Baqarah are clearly saying, actually, no, ذَلِكَ الْكِتَابِ, it mentions هُدًى لِلْمُتَّقِينَ. This book is a guidance for people. It's not just there as a form of piety. Yes, that does happen on the side. It happens automatically, but that's not the sole purpose of the Quran, and not the sole purpose of Islam, to just gather rewards. It's beyond that. That will happen regardless, right? But that's some of my feelings, and also being critical of this idea that we have of mosques. And I think we need to start thinking about this. And I don't think what's happened so far has been a natural occurrence, because we've only been around here for 50, 60 years, right? In the form that we have so many mosques, and we've applied the copy and paste model that we had back in our home countries, and we copied them from there and pasted them right here. But now we should move on to the formation period of, okay, come back to the epistemology. Why are we doing this? What is the purpose of a mosque here, especially in London, alongside, all these ideologies that are around us? Surely we need to work alongside that. There are many people who don't feel welcome to come to the mosque. What has our mosque done, or our institute or organization done, to make every person in society feel welcome? And as I said, children, women, men of all ages, okay, and people from all countries, all backgrounds, regardless of the color of one's skin. And then we always say, talk about Bilal radiallahu anhu, that he was the first mu'adhin, which is the greatest honor that one can get, the first mu'adhin of the Masjid of Islam. And also when he climbed upon the Kaaba and gave adhan, some of the mushriks at the time, they were saying, had our forefathers been alive, they would have died of shock to see something like this. So had Bilal radiallahu anhu come to some of our mosques, he wouldn't be allowed to do adhan in some of them. I mean, and it's unfortunate. And we've got the message we need to give to our youngsters is, you are the future. You need to think about this, right? Zahra just said, I would let him in. So that's very kind of you, Zahra. But we've got to understand, youngsters, you are the future. You need to take this forward. We're not going to be around for so long, and that might be a good thing. You need to take this forward and understand, what was Islam doing in its early stages? What was Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam doing in Masjid al-Nabawi? And how can we take that story further? So sorry about that, Ustadh, coming back to your point, and we are over time, but so we'll move on to, I think, the last point. Is that okay, Ustadh?
Yeah, that's fine. I enjoyed listening to your point.
Yeah. The last point is, and it's a very important point, and I would like you to fully go on this. I'm going to stop talking now completely. It is, what is our role as facilitators? Some of these things we've already touched upon, but you can maybe summarize if you like. What is our role as facilitators? I believe, and this is Ustadha saying, Ustadha saying she believes it differs based on the relationship with young persons. So Ustadha, if you can talk a bit more in detail about that what is our role, the elders, what should they be doing? So I've looked at some of the critical aspects. You may want to look at it from your aspect.
Yeah, so I'll keep it brief, because obviously we're over time. But in terms of our role facilitating religion, I'll talk about myself first, so people of my generation. And I'd say that I personally feel that we can make an impact using social media. So by using, for example, apps like YouTube or Instagram. And I actually remember watching a podcast. I think it's called One Path Network. It's an Australian podcast, and Mufti Menk was there as a guest, and he was talking about TikTok, and he was saying how he signed up for TikTok, but he's not sure how to use it. And obviously some people might have a shock horror when they hear that, right? But his view really appealed to me. He said that I view all of these apps or all of these sort of social media platforms as places of gathering, and because there are a lot of young people on there, I feel that we should get there too and sort of make our mark as well. So yeah, I'd say in terms of young people, I think that's one of the things they could do. So go on social media and be it making videos, be it writing up full posts, be it TikTok. I don't really know, TikTok's not my thing, so I don't know how I'd fit in there either. And then in terms of the older people or the older generation, I personally feel how you're talking about the I don't know how to say the word, epistemological.
Yeah.
That aspect of Islam, it's all about why and why we do things, right? So when you're trying to help somebody practice, you're actually working on their heart. So you're working on them, their convictions, you're trying to change that, and so they can do it for themselves. And thereafter their out of practice will come. So I just feel like young people, older people, sorry, I know that they've been through maybe a different way of practicing Islam, but I just feel like they should be a little bit more lenient with young people, more understanding, open to conversation, open to listening, and just help them and support them and really accept them for who they are, as well as sort of just let them explore their talents, and be there to guide them as well. I'm not saying all discipline should stop. I'm not saying that at all. Like, they should still discipline them as well, but maybe just sort of let off a bit, you know. And yeah, but that's it really.
No, absolutely, 100%, Ustadha. And we got to remember that if we overdo something and someone gets fed up of something, how likely are they going to be when they do gain freedom to come back to that tradition? It's going to be very unlikely.
Very
Yeah, it's going to be unlikely. So it's important that we don't overdo something, definitely. And something that comes to mind is, I think it was Abdullah ibn Mas'ud radiyallahu anhu, or another Sahabi, a scholarly Sahabi, who used to, during the time of the Tabi'een, so after Prophet passed away, he used to come, and every Thursdays he used to lecture the Tabi'een on whatever topic. And this is quoted in Bukhari as well, in Muslim. And the Tabi'een came to him and said, look, you come to us every Thursdays and you lecture us, and we feel we gain so much from this. Why don't you do this on a daily basis with us? And his response, and which I conclude on, was that, look, we learn from Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam that if we overburden you with something, then it will no longer benefit you. And that's why it's better to do this, just say once in a week. And that's why he used to lecture them once a week. I'm going to find that hadith and send that round as well.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, absolutely. So that was about Thursdays. It doesn't mean that you don't go to madrasa every day, or no. What it means is we need to find a balance for us as individuals. Some people might want more, they might need more. And sometimes teachers have to say, you know what, we need a balance. We need to look at Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam's life holistically. So sometimes when we approach the Prophet, we approach him just for spiritual needs, or we approach him just for certain aspect of his life. But actually, let's look at his life in entirety, a holistic way of looking at him. And something that I always mention to our students, and every time I mention it, whenever Anas is hearing this, his eyebrows go up. And
Is
this
it my brother, Anas?
Yeah, your brother Anas. And has he mentioned it to you about archery?
What point? I know you guys do archery, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, so the point I always raise is there's a hadith, and in that hadith, Prophet ﷺ says, "Ta'allam al-rumya wal-Quran," as in learn archery, or the throwing of arrows, and the Quran. That's in one sentence, right? And I always mention this hadith to our students to say that Prophet ﷺ is a prophet, and his entire life and living is a role model for us. Not just worship, or not just the 5 pillars, or not just aqidah. His life in entirety is a message for us. He was a wrestler, right? He was an archer. He was good at running. He was good at swimming. He was good on horseback, right? So how much of that have we brought into our lives?
Yeah.
So this is
Ustadh, in addition to that, I'd also say that I remember one student once saying, she was my senior, so a couple of years senior to me, and she was saying that sometimes the Prophet ﷺ, obviously he's so perfect, and trying to be everything he was is difficult, so he is the role model, and I'm not taking that away from him, but sometimes we can latch on to the lives of a particular Sahabi or Sahabi or more, and I'd encourage the young people to do that as well, like somebody who's quite similar to them, and they were still known for the Islam, so yeah, just go.
I know, absolutely. And we're never going to be able to fully emulate the Prophet. There may be there's certain aspects that you might want to think about and latch onto, and go into with that intention, inshallah. So that was that. Ustadha Yasmin is saying on here, teaching Islam in a holistic way, as Ustadh Hamid is always saying, plays a key role. Teaching methods can either inspire or take a young person away from Islam. Aim to reach the qalb, meaning the heart, with Allah's love. Absolutely. So it is about aiming for the hearts of students, and that will happen in the best form and the best intention possible. And the intention should be that we need to win over the hearts of our students, as Prophet ﷺ was doing in every way. That's intellectually, spiritually, physically, in every way possible. So Ustadha, would you like to give any concluding remarks before we finish our session? A basic summary, or a few things that you want to highlight?
Yeah, I'd just say that just a message to the young people out there. You are accepted. You are really good. You have loads of talents, and the Muslim community does need you, and you are part of our Muslim community. And whether or not Islam has been a positive or negative experience in your life, please don't blame the religion for that. And please give it another shot, and just take it at your own pace. And I'm sure you'll find people to support you, and people at FET, you know, Ustadh Hamid will be there to support you. I'll be there to support you. I'm not sure how because I'm not part of FET. But yeah, you know, that's just the message for them.
Jazakallah Ustadha, you were always part of FEP. I'll just add that. And we'll hopefully see you once, inshallah, you know, lockdown finishes and everything comes back. Everyone's thanking us on both chats to say Jazakallah to you, Ustadha Asmaa, for taking out your time and joining us. And, you know, it's not just a one-off. Hopefully you can come back more regularly on our Fridays or any other session as well, inshallah.
Yeah.
To all our viewers, to all
So
our
yeah, I
viewers.
just wanted to say Jazakallah khairan Ustadh Hamid for letting me come on and letting me have a chat with you, and also to all of the listeners and all of that, the love and support that you're sending through. And one more thing that I wanted to say is that I actually attended the 5-year anniversary of FET, and I was so inspired and I was so happy just to see all of the things that FET had achieved. And I'm a friend of the Southern Brothers anyway, so we're always like talking about FET and how you guys are doing and stuff. So you never know, maybe I might come back. You know, it was
inshallah.
like the 5-year anniversary was amazing, really, mashallah. And may Allah give you guys istiqamah, may Allah accept all the efforts from you, and may Allah grant you even more. You know?
Ameen. Jazakallah Ustadha, and it will be an honor to have you back, inshallah. And for us, we have gone over time. Sorry about that, Ustadha. Do forgive us for that, and sorry to all our viewers as well. But from us, Jazakallah khairan, everyone, for joining in and asking questions as well, and, you know, giving your words of wisdom as well. From us, subhanallah bihamdihi, subhanakallahumma bihamdika, ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta, astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk.